Welcome to the Explainer. Let's jump right in. Today, we are focusing on a highly specific but absolutely critical operational shift for developers handling automation at scale. We're talking about migrating managed cloud capture workflows from CapMonster to CaptchaAI. Now, if you're managing a pipeline that processes thousands or maybe even millions of requests, you already know that infrastructure overhead, capture coverage, and cost predictability are just paramount. So in this explainer, we're going to look closely at the technical nitty-gritty of this migration. We're keeping it strictly educational, focused entirely on the code and your pipeline architecture.
But right off the bat, before we get into the technical weeds, I want to establish a very clear safety anchor. This type of workflow should only be used in owned, client-authorized, or contractually permitted environments. Automation tools are incredibly powerful, right? And professional developer ethics dictate that we only deploy these capabilities where we have explicit permission to do so. Okay, with that critical baseline set, let's look at how we're going to tackle this. So what's the game plan? We're going to break this explainer down into 5 key areas. First, reevaluating your stack. Second, a 10-step playbook. Third, API field mapping details. Fourth, a balanced capability comparison. And finally, pitfalls and FAQs.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Reevaluating Your Stack.
Now you might be wondering, why even consider changing up a system that is currently successfully delivering tokens to your pipeline? Well, CapMonster is a really solid solver, no doubt about it, but teams that hit crazy high volumes frequently start to rethink their setup, and the primary driver there is the billing model. See, CapMonster bills per solve, meaning your costs climb linearly as your volume scales up. Plus, managing desktop builds or self-hosted setups, that requires infrastructure overhead. CPUs, proxies, constant maintenance. On the flip side, CaptchaAI offers a fully managed cloud solution. That means zero infrastructure for you to run, paired with thread-based pricing. With threads, you are paying for concurrency, which gives you unlimited solves per thread, and that essentially flattens your costs at scale. It's a real game changer for high-volume operations.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 10-step playbook.
So flattening costs and ditching infrastructure management sounds good. How do you actually make the switch? Well, the most important thing to grasp here is that this migration does not require rebuilding your entire workflow. Both providers rely on the exact same submit-then-pull pattern. So here is your literal operational checklist. It starts with strategy. Confirm your workflow is authorized and ask yourself if you truly need self-hosting. If yes, stay put. If no, let's proceed. Next, map your code. Confirm your current submit and pull flow, translate your fields, and evaluate JSON versus REST. Then, review your actual capture coverage needs, stuff like reCAPTCHA, turnstile, or full Cloudflare challenges. Finally, it comes down to testing and execution. Grab a free trial to test safely, run both services in parallel before cutting over, and evaluate your pricing based on concurrency, not just your monthly volume. And above all else, always track downstream success, not just whether a token was handed back to you.
All right, Section 3, API Field Mapping Details.
Let's actually look under the hood and get down to the code level. What's really interesting here is how straightforward the translation is. You're shifting from CapMonster's JSON post tasks over to CaptchaAI's REST query parameters. So instead of calling createTask, you're going to route to in.php. Instead of pulling getTaskResult, you'll just query res.php/action equals get. Your target website key simply becomes Google key, and website URL maps straight to page URL. If you were using reCAPTCHA v2 task proxyless, well, that just becomes method user reCAPTCHA. You aren't changing the core logic of your app at all. You're literally just swapping out the syntax of the request.
And here's a detail you definitely don't want to miss regarding response parsing. Once that poll finally returns a success, you have to parse the final token from the CaptchaAI REST response, rather than looking for CapMonster's specific solution.gReCAPTCHA response field. It's a tiny tweak actually, but it's absolutely crucial to make sure your downstream workflow successfully captures and utilizes that token.
On to Section 4, a balanced capability comparison.
Now that we know the how, let's take a step back and ask, is this migration objectively right for your specific pipeline? Honestly, neither platform is universally better. They just serve entirely different architectural needs. CapMonster remains an exceptionally strong choice if your team relies on local hardware desktop solving, if you need their built-in batch queues, or if you specifically require Gtest v4 support. CaptchaAI, however, is a much stronger fit for teams that want a fully managed cloud solution with zero installation.
It's also ideal if you need coverage for the full-page Cloudflare challenge, which actually returns the real CF_clearance cookie, as well as BLS multi-image CAPTCHA and a massive library of over 27,500 image OCR types.
And then there's the pricing structure. This is where the rubber really meets the road. At lower volumes, say around 10,000 solves a month, CapMonster's per solve model is actually cheaper. You're looking at roughly $10 compared to CaptchaAI's $15 entry plan. But scale that up, and the gap widens dramatically. Because CaptchaAI sizes plans by concurrency threads with unlimited solves, an advanced 50-thread plan running 1 million solves costs about $90. With per solve billing, that same million solves would push you to around $1,000. It's a fundamental structural pivot. Once your threads are paid for, your marginal cost for any additional volume literally drops to zero.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Pitfalls and FAQs. Let's zoom back out to the operational level to make sure you execute this flawlessly. Even with a clear map, migrations can go sideways, so dodge these common traps. First, do not treat this as a full rebuild. Like we said, it's just a targeted swap. Never move all your production traffic over at once. Don't fall into the trap of comparing headline pricing without actually analyzing your specific concurrency needs. You have to size your plans by how many parallel requests you make, not just your total monthly volume. And honestly, the biggest pitfall? Treating the mere delivery of a token as a full success. You absolutely must track your downstream workflow success, because a token is completely useless if the target server rejects the final session context. Let's tackle a few rapid-fire questions we hear all the time from developers. First up, is CaptchaAI compatible with CapMonster's exact API format? The answer is no. It doesn't emulate the JSON format, but it uses REST query parameters, and the submit and pull workflow remains totally identical. So the core logic is the same, just the formatting changes. Next, do you still need to run desktop software? Absolutely not. If you make this switch, CaptchaAI operates entirely as a fully managed cloud service. That means zero desktop installation, zero CPU burden on your end, and no more babysitting your own proxies. You just hit the API and you're good to go. Can both providers run in parallel? Yes. In fact, they definitely should. Since the integration patterns are so incredibly similar, you can easily use a simple try-catch wrapper in your code. This lets you run both services as fallbacks during your transition window, which ensures zero downtime for your pipeline while you validate the new integration. Here's a big one. Is CaptchaAI always the cheaper option? No way. It totally depends on your volume. If your pipelines run under roughly 50,000 solves a month, you're probably going to find CapMonster to be more cost-effective. The true massive savings with CaptchaAI are only unlocked when high volume meets their flat-rate thread concurrency model.
So what should you test before pulling the trigger? We highly recommend grabbing CaptchaAI's 3-day free trial. It gives you 5 threads to play around with. Use that as a strict, controlled test window. Point it at your real, actual target sites to confirm coverage and downstream acceptance before you even think about routing any production traffic.
Wrapping this all up, please treat switching from CapMonster to CaptchaAI as a controlled migration, not some sudden flip-the-switch cutover. Map your fields, test the waters with a free trial, run both providers in parallel, evaluate your actual costs based on true concurrency, and above all, measure downstream workflow acceptance before you scale up. Which leaves us with a provocative final thought for you to take back to your own projects. Is your current pipeline architecture really optimized for true real-world downstream success, or are you just paying linearly for an API to hand you a token? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy building.